In November 2016, I went in for a back operation. During the operation, the surgeons tore a vein and they didn't know, and they stitched me back up and sent me back to the ward. And basically I bled out internally for 16 hours, and during the night I was pressing the button which had a painkiller called fentanyl, and I'd press it and fentanyl would be released into my body, and the pain would step back a little bit, but during the night the pain got worse. And I called the nurses and they reassured me and just said to keep pressing the button. And the painkiller was on a timer, so I'd press the button and then I'd have to wait 10 minutes or so before I could have another hit. And I just couldn't get enough. I was just in pain all night and had a very restless night. And the next morning, the physio came to get me up, and after back surgery, they get you up as fast as they can to start the body healing. And I sat on the edge of the bed and I looked down at my leg, and it was really swollen, like it was 1.5 times the size that it normally is. And I said to the physio, something's not right. My leg's not normally like this. And he said to me, you'll be okay. Up, just hop up and we'll get you moving. And I stood up and I felt extremely dizzy, and I had to sit down, and then I collapsed back onto the bed. And the physio pressed the red alert button, and a emergency team came very quickly. Like, I don't know if I had kind of passed out a bit. I think I had, and I passed out, came back in, and there was an emergency team, and they were attaching electrodes on me and telling me to keep my eyes open and stay here, stay with us. And I could hear them, and I could see, like I was looking, and I heard them say he doesn't have a pulse, and that one of the last things I heard was his blood pressure is 52/36, and a normal blood pressure is 120/60. And I knew that I was dying. I knew that in that moment I was dying. And I remember looking at the physio, and he was standing over, if I'm like here, he was standing over there, and he looked so scared. And I actually thought, you poor bastard. And I felt so sorry for him. And I could see another medical person in the room taking notes about everything that was, well, I assume it was about everything that was happening. And I left. I experienced myself as ripples just going out and out and out. And I left the room, and I was the ripples. It wasn't, I didn't see ripples, I was the ripples. And I was going out in all directions. And I started to express that I wanted to stay, and I realized that I was actually dying, and I could still think, and I could still express, and I wasn't speaking out loud, but I still had conscious thought. And I found myself saying, I want to stay. And I had a partner then, and I said I want to stay for her, and I was still the ripples going out further and further and further. And we had a blended family, and I had a daughter, and I said I want to stay for the kids, and I was still going, I was still dying, I was still experiencing this, and I was going further and further, and I felt this warmth and this calm come over me, and I said I want to stay for the work that I do and walk the planet from my heart. And the moment I said that, like the very instant, I came straight back into my body. And the emergency crew had a pulse. I had this expectation, I guess, that I was going to come back and be healed, but I came back to level 11 torturous pain, and I'd lost so much blood in my body. I don't know if hopping up caused me to lose more blood, that the vein ripped even more and I lost more blood. But I eventually had almost 3 liters of blood put back into my body, and most people have around 6 liters of blood. And so all that blood was in my body. It was in my legs and my abdomen. And, you know, this might be a bit embarrassing to share, but my scrotum was actually like full of blood. It was huge. And later on, you know, after I came out of ICU and things like that, if I wanted to roll over, I actually had to lift it up and move it first and then roll. And I was in extreme pain, and they rushed me through the ward. I remember like straight into the lift. Someone was holding the lift. We went down to the base of the hospital where the imaging equipment was, and they put me in a CAT scan, I guess it was. I don't know what the machine was, but I was just moaning and screaming. I was in so much pain. And following the scan, they took me to the ICU, and the doctor there put me on morphine, which helped with the pain, and I was alive. And I was alive. And over the next few days, I was in the ICU, and I remember at one point there was a nurse there, and I couldn't move. Like, I could hardly speak, and my body, you know, I'd had the back operation and I'd lost so much blood, and I don't know what other trauma, but I couldn't move. Like, if I wanted to move my legs, they had to move them for me. And like even now, my heels on my feet, they get sore if they're sitting somewhere because they were resting on the bed for so long, and it's like they're permanently bruised. And there was a nurse there, and I remember saying to her, I'm so grateful to know this level of suffering. I could have died and not known what this level of suffering was like. And I actually felt it. Like, I felt all these people out in the world that are suffering, and I could have come in and lived a life and left and not knowing how much they were suffering. And over the next few days, I went through hell. I was grateful to be alive, but the suffering, and it was just torturous. And eventually, after about a week, I developed a massive blood clot, which went from my abdomen down to my ankle. And that created a lot more complications and made it difficult to work. And it took me 8 months to recover and return to full-time work. I was grateful to be alive, and I had this realization that I had to experience near death for a reason. And I was allowed to come back because I said I would stay for the work that I do and walk the planet from my heart. And when I expressed that, I had these visions of what the work that I had to do was. And for me, the work is being myself and sharing myself. And that requires being myself. And so the last 5 years have been around, what does that mean? What does it mean to walk from my heart? What does it mean to be here to do the work of being myself? It hasn't been easy, and I've learned a lot around human nature and my things that I've struggled with. I've learned that most people struggle with them, and I was so ashamed to share what I was struggling with. I was so judgmental of myself that I had these struggles, and I can still be. I'm human, and I guess what my message now is for people is, what is the gift you have to give? And it's quite possible the things that you think are holding you back, they're not real. And I was allowed to stay for the gifts that I have to give. And I learn more and more about them the more I stay, and the more I commit myself to the work of being myself and sharing myself. And you know, my heart loves helping other people. This is one of the key things that I do. And you know, I'm a musician, and I'm a partner, and I'm a dad, and I have all these things that I do, but the sharing of myself and the helping of others seems to be so crucial. And I have a contract to stay for the work that I do and walk the planet from my heart. And it's led me to the most wonderful places and experiences. And I'm grateful every day. So for example, this morning I went for a run, and the run got quite challenging, and I thought, I'm alive and I'm using my body. And that's the mantra that I had as I was running. I'm alive and I'm using my body. And yeah, what a beautiful gift to still be alive and be helping people.